Dr. Doug Miller, thank you so much for joining the Chuck and Rita Show.
Welcome.
I'm so excited. I always look forward to talking to you two. Always grateful for what you do for my program. So let's get going.
Let's do it. Well, yeah, tell us a little about yourself. Where you at now? Where you been? Where you coming from?
Yeah, I am probably one of the most senior faculty in the school business. I've been here a while. And I got into hospitality, which we're going to talk about today, as a kid. My family moved from Colorado, Denver, the big city. I was a city boy, to a little town in Montana, Anaconda, if anyone knows. And in junior high, and that was kind of a tough transition. There was nothing to do for me. And I always had desire to go out and work and make money and do some of those things. And there was a nice resort just outside of our town. So as soon as I could, that was a place you could find a job. As soon as I could, I went and got a job as a busboy at this beautiful resort, and I loved it. I stayed there all through high school. I made a lot of money. I got to eat for free in the restaurant. As a young kid, that was like more valuable than the money. I got to run around the resort and chase the little 16-year-old girls, that came to visit. I mean, I was in heaven. It was just such a great job, and it was busy. It was hard work. Restaurants were busy, and it's physical, but I loved it. And so I discovered hospitality pretty early on. Then I ended up in the islands, which was quite a transition from cold Montana to tropical islands in the South Pacific.
Wow.
Yeah. And Hawaii, and I preferred the islands, yes, as most people. I loved the water and the weather and things. So I built my hospitality career in the islands. Went to school in Hawaii, undergraduate, and my MBA in Hawaii, and worked for various hotels and restaurants. Right out of college, my first kind of grown-up job was in Fiji, which was high-end and fun at a beautiful luxury resort in Nandi. And so, I kind of discovered this good gig early on and was fortunate to have, and I enjoyed it. And so from there, I just worked. I knew I wanted to teach eventually. And at some point along the way, I got married and had a few kids, and it was at that time when I decided, in fact, we were a young family. I was running a resort in a small resort in Tonga in the South Pacific, and decided it was probably time to bring the kids to a place where education and healthcare and we were on a remote island. I mean, we were far from anything secure that way. It was beautiful. I could have lived there forever, but with the family, we made some decisions and decided it was time to get a PhD and go into teaching. Came to the U of U, promised my wife, who is Polynesian, that we would return to the islands as soon as I finished. She still reminds me that I have not kept that promise. I'm very old. So we stayed here. While we were at the U of U, I had been there a year when UVU called and said, we need some help teaching hospitality. Would you come? And so I came over and started running the hospitality program, and have stayed here basically ever since. We did go back to Hawaii for a few years to teach, but I've been here running the hospitality program.
Sounds like we're in the wrong job.
I know. What are we doing?
Right?
Okay, that's what I'm hoping that we can do today.
Yeah.
That's my job today, is convince some of your students that hospitality has some advantages.
Don't sleep on hospitality management. That's what
we're here for.
That's right. That's right.
I'm hearing we could live on tropical islands.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Can you describe a typical day in a role within hospitality management?
And that's one of the things I love about it. And I think there are some students that will just gravitate to hospitality for the very reason that hospitality every day is different. There are some jobs where you go in and I'm not gonna diss on any of your other podcasters or other careers. I know you're bringing in accountants and some of these other, the days may not be all that different. hospitality, you never know what's going to happen that day when you have hundreds of guests, all and diverse and staff and all kinds of things going on. You just don't know what the day is going to bring, and I find that exciting. If I worked at some places that were not well organized and were unprepared for that, and that was horrible. It can be a tough business if you're not ready, if you're unprepared, if the management is ashamed of what's going on, so they hide in the back. But if you know what you're doing and you've got things organized and you're prepared, it can be fun.
So you mentioned that you managed a small resort in Tonga. What was that day-to-day like? As much as you can. You said it's every day was different. What were you managing people? Were you managing events? Were you what's the checklist of a manager of a resort?
A little of all of that. You have a lot of people coming and going, but hospitality also is very labor intensive. So you have a lot of staff. You have a lot of employees that you have to manage, and half of your problems, and that may be a question we'll talk about later on, come because of the staffing and the employee issue. So you've got to really make sure you got your people there. In the service industry, guests expect quality service and they expect it in a timely fashion. Things have to happen on time. Otherwise, people get impatient. As you know, when you eat in a restaurant, if you're delayed for 10, 15 minutes, all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, we're not coming back. You can't afford that in this business. You've got to be on top of everything all the time. So you're checking your staff, you're making sure everything's ready, and every day something's going on that you're putting out a fire here and there. You're walking the property as the general manager just to see, did everything happen last night that should have happened? Is everybody in place? Does the place look good? You're having meetings with, usually in the morning with the key staff, finding out who's checking in terms of groups or what's events that you might be hosting that day. Are we ready? Is everything in play? In Tonga, it's a little bit different and a little bit harder, especially on an isolated island like that. Yeah. If I'm running a resort in Park City, I have food deliveries every day. I can call the food purveyors and they're coming up and we get our orders in every day. We have produce coming and going. On an island in Tonga, I make that order. I wait 3 or 4 weeks for it to show up. And it has to be large enough to last for several months because it has to come on a ship with a container capacity. So there were a lot of nuances to a little island like that, but which was part of the pleasure of hospitality. Again, you just, depending on where you're at geographically, can also throw in some curveballs and some nuanced ways that you manage. But your question was the typical day, and it's checking everything, making sure the staff is in order, making sure they're doing their thing, that they look good, and that the guests are moving in the way they're supposed to. Yeah. Meeting with key individuals, checking your budget, checking your reports. What were the numbers last night? A lot of finance and accounting, and it's a business, so you got to make money.
Yeah, it sounds very rounded.
It does.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. You mentioned the fires.
Yeah.
A lot of fires, not literal firefighting, but
a lot of fires. Well, you do some literal fires.
Oh wow, geez. Well, and to that point, what was one of the biggest crises that you faced in your career, and how did you manage that situation?
Yeah.
Sounds like an interview question, like an actual we're interviewing. It's not like that. Just casually. Yeah.
Well, there's so many, it's hard to pick. So in the South Pacific, you've got all kinds of weather-related issues, hurricanes that can shut down, and on the islands that may not. Hawaii was a little more prepared, but Fiji and Tonga and some of the other islands, their power grids and so on aren't quite as sophisticated. So if power goes off, you could be 3, 4, 5 weeks in some cases if the hurricane was significant enough. And you've got international tourists who've paid top dollar and it's hard to get to places like that you are now responsible for. And I was a young manager so I didn't have to carry the burden of it all, but I had to participate when a major hurricane hit Fiji. And you have a lot of guests that, you're trying to keep safe, and then you're putting them in a ballroom with candles, and you're trying to figure out everything, and then you're trying to get them off the island over the next week or whatever. Stuff like that happens everywhere. I mean, again, that's part of the excitement of the industry, part of the fun. In Tonga, the Crown Prince, Tonga is a monarchy, a true kingdom with a monarch government, and the Crown Prince liked to come to the island and stay at the hotel. Oh, wow. They had a little palace on the island. That was too much work for him. He didn't like all that. He wanted to just be kind of a little more incognito and hide and stay away from all the duties and everything. So he liked to stay at the hotel. I was new to the island and to the hotel. The reservation manager comes. She's also an expat. She was from Canada. There was a few of us there, and so we both kind of thought alike. And she came to me one day. I'm on the grounds with the grounds crew, and said, "I think we might have a problem. The Crown Prince wants a room next week." And I told his secretary, "No, we're booked." It was a major international fishing tournament, a deep sea fishing tournament that was coming through. It was being hosted there on the island at our hotel. It was really the best international hotel on the island.
Well, kudos to your coworker for saying no
Yes.
to the Crown Prince. I don't know if I would have had the gall.
me either.
Be like, "Yes, sir, you got it."
Whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of high-fived her and said, "Yeah, we don't have room. Tell them to stay at the palace." That was kind of our thing. And I said, "Yeah, I agree with you. We were overbooked. And there's not like, on an island like that where you can start walking guests or send them down the street to some other luxury property or whatever else. I mean, it's hard to get there. You planned for it. You paid deposits. We had a commitment to honor for those guests. So I agreed with her. Yeah, no, we can't do it. About an hour later, I got a call from the governor of the island, and he was very cordial. And he says, "I know you're new. We haven't met. I understand the Crown Prince is looking for a room." And I said, "Yeah, we're just overbooked. We've got this tournament." He paused for a second, and then he said something and the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew we were in trouble. He said, he just quietly, and it was, I don't know, it was the tone or something. He said, "Take care of the Crown Prince." And he hung up. And I just had this overwhelming feeling like, uh-oh. We got to rethink this. And so we did. We took care of the Crown Prince. And over time, I realized I needed to learn the culture and the way things operated. And when the royal family called, and they did, he especially regularly, we just did whatever he asked, whenever he asked. And all of a sudden, a road that we needed to be paved gets paved. Certain things, there were things that you had to be able to do. And that happens in any business. You have to know. And sometimes you have to stretch. It was an ethical thing. It's a great case study in ethics because we had to take some guests who had legitimately made reservations and did everything right and move them out to some third-rate place that they were very angry, but what could we do?
But it sounds like there's a lot of empowerment in hospitality because you didn't have to go and ask somebody. The person who answered the phone the original time didn't have to come to you and ask if the Crown Prince could stay. Do you find that in most of the places?
Hotels are trying to empower their employees, and as you get into the higher quality properties, particularly a luxury like a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, they do very much empower their employees. They, in fact, give the front desk clerk a budget to say, if you have to solve a problem, solve it. Don't put the guest on hold and say, "Let me look into it," or "Let me get the manager." Solve it. If it costs you $300-400, it doesn't matter. Take care of it. Never say no to a guest is the mantra at some of those type properties, and so they work very hard to empower their employees. It's hard to do. We all like to say that, but a lot of management has a real hard time letting go of that. There's still budget constraints and concerns and other things that they like to get involved in. So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But we're trying to be better at empowering in the hospitality industry.
So you talked about the Crown Prince coming to visit.
Yeah.
So who is the most famous person you've interacted with?
You know, I was never really a big celebrity chaser. I think my students have a lot better stories. Even just here in Provo and Park City and Salt Lake, they come back and we've had some great celebrity sightings at some of these properties. I did as a college student, and in Fiji we didn't have a lot of celebrities, but we did have a lot of money, big money. No one knows the name, but these were people who were billionaires, and so we were always told there's VIPs coming. Who are they? And I had no idea who they were, but then I find out that they, were extremely wealthy.
But if you could choose a celebrity, if you had anybody in the world to come stay at your resort, who would it be?
Yeah, I thought of that. I'd probably, this may sound silly, but I'd probably go with someone like Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Jim Gaffigan.
Yes.
I think I would rather eat with a comedian.
Yeah.
That just kind of a little more down to earth and funny. That's just me. I know there are some, I know half my students would say someone like Taylor Swift or Tom Brady or some big sports. I never did. I saw a lot. I did see when I was a room service waiter in college at a large hotel in Waikiki. A major hotel in Waikiki. So I'm going to school and I did graveyard room service. That was an interesting job. That was a crazy job. You see all kinds of stuff and all kinds of weird things happening at a major resort. But that hotel would host the NFL Pro Bowl and so I did see quite a few. I took room service. I remember taking a 2 a.m. major food order into Hakeem Olajuwon's room.
Wow.
And he was chatty, for about 5 minutes. Just So I mean, there were other times when, when you go into a room and you go, oh wow, someone I know.
And for you NBA fans, that would be like Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's like Hakeem was one of the top 5 players in the league.
MVP a couple of years ago.
That's incredible. I'm starstruck. Yeah. I'm envious. That would be amazing.
I want to know, did they tip well?
Ooh.
Yes. That's why I did graveyard room service. It was great tips. You made really good money. It was it wasn't as busy perhaps as during the day, but they were a little more, they were a little more generous because it was 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whatever.
I know if I was ordering room service, I'd tip pretty well.
At 2 a.m.
At 2
especially.
a.m. for sure. Yeah, I got that.
It was a good job. It was a great job. I enjoyed that job. You never knew who you were going to see or what was going to happen.
That's cool. Okay. What are the most common problems that need solving in the hospitality industry today? Yeah. And can you share an example? I think you've already shared a bunch of really good examples of that. And I think it sounds like people are really...
I'm going to come right back to that. It is absolutely staffing. Yeah, it's finding people. And when we get to talk about the WARM program or in the hospitality program, we'll draw that connection. Hotels, resorts, restaurants, food, event management, country clubs, amusement parks, everything that comes under the hospitality umbrella is usually labor intensive and you need a lot of people. They're hard to find. They're hard to find good people, and the quantity that you need of good people are hard to find. So every hotel, restaurant's probably understaffed across the country.
So be nice to them.
Yeah.
I was going to say a people and culture and HR almost component of this, where you really have to build a really strong worker loyalty almost.
You want to hang on to them. If you find a good one, you really need to try and hang on to them. You're limited a little bit in hospitality. I mean, if you're doing restaurants, you find a good waiter or a good cook or you just can't throw the bank at them because the profit margins don't allow that. You've got to stay within a competitive range. So there's only so much you can do when it comes to money. They're hard to hang on to. But even as you get into the management level, which is what we're doing here at UVU, we're training our students to be managers, and not the line level, but the senior level. There's a lot of openings. There's a lot of opportunity if you're good in that. You can go anywhere.
So we're talking about openings, right? I'm going to segue into the students are going to hear from me ad nauseum how much I love networking. So when we're talking about job openings, how important is networking in your experience?
Networking helped me a lot, particularly the job to Fiji I was fortunate because of networking to get that job. I was fortunate because of networking to get the job in Tonga. So networking is going to open up so many doors. It's critical. I agree with both of you. I've heard you both express that and teach that in your classes. I would say that in hospitality, you can still succeed just because of the need. Networking can expedite it and can put you in better places faster, perhaps. And hospitality is a people business. Networking comes natural to us. And it's a transient business. A lot of hotel managers are moving from place to place. That's what draws a lot of people to this industry is they want to see the country, want to travel, want to see the world. They don't want to be in Park City for their whole career. They want to do a couple of years there and then go to New York and then go to Hawaii and then and you can absolutely do that. And as you do that, every place you go, you're making new connections and friends and networking there becomes, I think most top level management in hospitality would have a story where I'm here because I worked with so-and-so in Florida 5 years ago and they called me and said, hey, we got an opening. So hospitality, networking is critical, and because of the nature of our business, it happens naturally.
So some students are afraid of that word networking. So in the hospitality industry, what does networking look like?
Just doing a good job, going to work, doing your job, being conscientious about it, it's great to be a student in the program, because if you're just an employee and you tell your manager, hey, I want to be promoted, or okay, you're just one of the individuals that's asking, everybody wants that. But when you're a student, they expect that from you. When you're going to school and you say, I'm here, I'm learning, I want to do this and that, management pauses and they stop, they listen, they want to help you through that process. So a student who is conscientious about it and talks to various people, because all the management, they're moving around the hotel. Everyone gets a chance to see people and know people. And if they just say, oh, hi, and I want to work for you one day, it's going to generate a conversation, and that individual is going to take an interest in the student and want to follow up with them. So there are some tricks that they can do, but it's usually pretty just common sense things. Be a good employee, be on time. Managers talk and say, oh yeah, I love Joe, he's great. Apply for jobs in other departments as they become open, just to kind of expand your reach into other areas and your networking possibilities. So it's easy to do in hospitality. And if you're drawn to hospitality, you're probably naturally capable of opening up those conversations. And we try and I appreciate the fact that you're teaching them that. I know in your classes it's a significant part of the class, and we appreciate that you do that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick overarching question here, connecting these ideas. Networking is easy because it's part of it.
Yeah.
Hospitality management in general is one of the biggest industries. Well, tourism in general. Number one globally, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. Number one globally.
When we're talking about job security, job placement, opportunity for growth and advancement, hospitality management could be one of the most secure industries if that's what a student's looking for.
Yes, 100%. A lot of students don't understand the breadth of what they can do with hospitality. We're a people business, and COVID kind of sped up this process where we have withdrawn from people. It really sped that up, actually. And so a lot of people don't go to the office anymore. They're just disconnected. The only connection they have might be on Teams or something, which isn't quite the same. We can't do that in hospitality. We have to stay connected to people. And I'm hearing all of the time about industries that are not what you would consider hospitality, that are looking for hospitality-minded individuals. For example, this Edison, the club, office club type, it's a new concept in Salt Lake. It's getting a lot of attention. People that don't want, small businesses, lawyers, real estate agents, anyone that can't afford an office, doesn't want to afford, they can buy into this office building that's set up as a club, and they pay a fee to be a member, and then they pay some dues. But what they get is they get use of high quality office space if they want to host a client. They've got food and beverage at a very high level that they can claim as their own. You know, it's like being a member of a country club. Let's go to my club. Let's go have lunch at my club. All of a sudden, instead of just being a real estate agent, you're a significant, you're a player in the game. That's happening a lot. And I've had one of my alums graduated, went and ran, worked at Amangiri, which is one of the top resorts in Utah, one of the top resorts in the United States. It's hidden down in the desert by Lake Powell. Very, very high-end resort. He was there for a while. Then he went to Mississippi and managed a hotel. But he was just stolen by a group called Kiln.
I'm familiar with them.
They're doing something similar to what Edison, this concept in Salt Lake, is doing, where they're taking office buildings and turning them into hospitality-focused office structures and infrastructure and services. And it's going to catch on. This Kiln group's going to grow, I think, significantly, as some of these others are.
So it's about an experience.
It's experience. Yeah. It's experience. And in Europe, I heard from some of the hospitality school in Europe, one of the top schools in Switzerland, is actually placing as many or more of their students in corporate banking and in significant hospitality roles where they are actually consultants or assistants to high wealth individuals and companies. Maybe a small law office will hire a hospitality director who takes care of their food and their travel and their hosting and all kinds of eclectic things that go on in that world, and they're being paid very well. That's why the hotels are nervous, because these people who have that kind of money are paying more than even the luxury hotels were paying. So there's a lot of movement in hospitality. It's not just the traditional hotel restaurant.
Sure, yeah. I immediately think business-to-business sales.
So do I.
Right? The highest level, multi-million-dollar deals by somebody who's been trained in creating an experience for some of these ultra-high-end clients. They're going to go to a hospitality. And this is the other thing we talk about a lot in our classes: skill transferability. People think, oh, because I'm a resort manager, I can't go and work at a bank or in finance. You absolutely can. You just have to communicate how that skill transfers, and it could be invaluable. It could be more valuable.
And that's the key word. You have to be able to communicate it. I tell the students, you have such a great story. They think their resumes look boring, but they have done some really interesting things. I mean, it may be on a small scale, but if they would just build a story around their resume,
They just haven't taken our class
I was gonna
yet.
say, plug for 3890, marketing
Yes.
3890. We teach you how to do this. Anyway,
You will have
yeah.
some great stories.
Yes, we'll help you write those stories, but it's so true. Yeah.
a student that works with mentally disabled seniors, and they want to do hospitality. They're like, wow, what a connection. What if I'm a hotel general manager and that's on your resume? I want you. I would hire you in a heartbeat. But you've got to build the story, make the connection, and it's a done deal. So there's a lot of this opportunity, and hospitality is one of the few industries anymore. A lot of business industries and other industries, the human connection has gone because of technology. We're one of the few where that is who we are. That's always been what we are. We haven't lost that. That's who we are. So I think that the opportunities in the future, number one industry in the world, lots of growth, people are always going to travel. It's in our DNA to want to travel. Someone's got to facilitate that, and it's not going to be done by AI or robots. People want human connection.
So we've also talked a lot about the warm, sandy places to put your feet. I'm a
Yes.
big skier.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to put my feet in the snow.
There you go.
So, I mean, think hospitality, not just for our beaches, right?
Oh yeah. Everywhere.
As you know, so if you're in Park City, you have your feet in the snow 6 months out of the year, and then some of those people will then go to Hawaii for 6 months out of the year and put their feet in the sand. You get a little bit of both, if that's kind of what they want. If they're transient enough to be able to do that. When you want to kind of settle down and be parked at a place, well, then you get a pick, snow or snow. Yeah.